California is facing an extremely dangerous contradiction. A shield worth about $4.7 billion was built to help the San Francisco Bay Area survive the next major earthquake. But right now, that very shield is already showing signs of instability before the disaster has even arrived. What is frightening is not only that the ground could start shaking at any moment. What is frightening is that around 8 million people are placing their trust in a critical water system that may not be able to withstand the very blow it was built to resist. Beneath the feet of millions of Bay Area residents, the Hetch Hetchy Regional Water System is carrying out a vital mission, delivering clean water from the Sierra Nevada over 167 miles to San Francisco and surrounding counties. But this system does not run through safe territory. It crosses some of the most dangerous seismic fault lines in California, where experts have long warned that a major earthquake is no longer a distant possibility. If that water system fails at the very moment strong shaking hits, the initial consequences will go far beyond a water outage. Water pressure would drop, firefighting capacity would weaken, hospitals would come under greater strain, and a densely populated region could be thrown into instability at the exact moment it needs basic life support the most. The problem is that many sections of this network date back to the 1920s and 1930s, a time when infrastructure was not designed to withstand the kind of seismic force California faces today. That is where the central contradiction becomes clear. A state that constantly talks about preparedness and protection is still leaving millions of people dependent on a system that continues to raise serious questions about its own reliability. So where is California heading if these warning signs have been visible in advance? Yet no one has addressed them with enough seriousness before the next major earthquake actually strikes. But California's problem does not stop at the earthquake risk itself. The bigger issue is that the weaknesses in this water system have been known for a very long time. The Hetch Hetchy Regional Water System crosses three major fault lines: San Andreas, Hayward, and Calaveras. All three are areas with strong seismic activity. At the same time, many of the system's older pipe sections were installed in the 1920s and 1930s using riveted steel, and they were never designed to withstand the level of seismic force that scientists are warning about today. That means California is entering a period of elevated risk, while still relying on a critical piece of infrastructure that was already outdated long ago. Engineers identified this problem early. They studied it, ran simulations, and determined that if the Hayward Fault produces an earthquake of about magnitude 7.1, some sections of this water line could suffer serious damage. That is why, in 2002, the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission launched the Water System Improvement Program. The goal was to replace the weakest sections, add seismic-resistant technology, and reduce the risk of a widespread water disruption during a major earthquake. In other words, officials knew where the weak points were, and they spent about $4.7 to $4.8 billion trying to address them. But the problem is that even after that upgrade process, the newer infrastructure is still showing signs of trouble. That is the most important detail in this story. California is not only facing the risk of a future major earthquake, it is also facing the possibility that the very structure built to withstand that disaster may not perform as expected. When a multi-billion-dollar shield is already showing signs of instability before it is truly tested, the question is no longer whether the infrastructure was rebuilt. The real concern is that no one can say with confidence that those weaknesses have been fully dealt with. And if a major earthquake does strike, the damage will not stop at this water system alone. If a major earthquake strikes and hits the weak points of the Hetch Hetchy system, the damage will not stop at a single water pipeline. This is a network stretching about 167 miles, carrying clean water from the Sierra Nevada to San Francisco and many surrounding areas, serving about 8 million people. If just one critical section shifts, cracks, or breaks, water pressure could drop immediately. At that point, the water supply for the entire Bay Area could face the risk of widespread disruption. The effects of that failure would appear very quickly. First is firefighting. After an earthquake, the risk of fires breaking out in multiple locations is always part of emergency planning. But if water pressure drops at that exact moment, the ability to contain those fires would be seriously weakened. Next are hospitals and medical facilities. These are places that need a stable water supply to keep operating during an emergency. If the water supply is interrupted, the entire process of receiving and treating the injured would come under even greater strain. At the same time, large numbers of residential areas could face a shortage of clean water at the very moment demand is at its highest. The situation would become even more serious if the shaking also disrupts electricity, transportation, and communications. In that case, reaching affected areas, coordinating rescue operations, and maintaining basic daily life would become far more difficult. An initial failure in the water infrastructure could quickly spread into many parts of everyday life. For the Bay Area, this would no longer be an isolated technical problem. It would become a risk capable of weakening the region's overall emergency response at its most critical moment. California has also revealed another problem in its early warning layer. In December 2025, the Shake Alert system sent out a false alarm across the entire state after mistakenly identifying a signal near Reno, Nevada, as an earthquake of about magnitude 5.9. No earthquake occurred afterward. That incident added to concerns about the reliability of the tools built to protect the public during emergencies. If a major earthquake truly does happen, the first people to feel the impact will be the communities that rely on those layers of protection every day. The impact of this risk will ultimately fall on the daily lives of Bay Area residents, where about 8 million people depend on the Hetch Hetchy water system every day. If a major earthquake disrupts this water line, the first groups affected will be households that need water for daily use, hospitals treating the injured, and neighborhoods waiting for assistance while infrastructure is already under strain. At that point, the issue will no longer be about design plans or technical reports. It will become a direct part of everyday life for millions of people. That pressure would arrive very quickly. If water pressure drops or the supply is interrupted, firefighting capacity would be affected at a time when the risk of post-earthquake fires is always high. Medical facilities would also come under greater strain as they try to continue operating with an unstable water supply. Many families could face a shortage of clean water at the exact moment demand rises the most. For a densely populated area like the Bay Area, this is the kind of situation that could make emergency response far more difficult. If electricity, transportation, and communications are also disrupted by the shaking at the same time, reaching affected areas and assisting residents would become slower. At that point, the impact would no longer be limited to one facility or one water line. It would spread directly into the daily lives of the communities that depend on that infrastructure every day. This is the stage when residents would face the visible consequences of an infrastructure failure during an emergency. California's problem does not stop at the Hetch Hetchy system. What is more concerning is that the state has had warnings, risk models, and major earthquake data for years. Yet the current level of preparedness still has not created a level of confidence that matches the scale of the threat. This water system is only one example, showing that a critical piece of infrastructure can still reveal signs of instability before it is truly tested. That risk becomes even more serious when placed in the wider picture. California has about 1.5 million structures that were built before modern seismic standards. Only about 10% of homeowners have earthquake insurance. The San Andreas Fault is cited as having about a 59% chance of producing an earthquake of magnitude 6.7 or greater within the next 30 years. At the same time, the Cascadia subduction zone is estimated to have about a 37% chance of producing a major earthquake within the next 50 years. These figures show that California does not lack warnings. What it still lacks is a level of readiness strong enough to reduce the damage when the worst-case scenario arrives. For California, this is no longer just a story about geology or a single infrastructure system. It is a story about the state's ability to protect its communities while living with constant large-scale risk. And the remaining question is this: if these weaknesses have already been identified in advance, what will California do before the worst moment actually arrives? If you live in California, especially in the Bay Area, share your perspective in the comments. Do you think the state is truly prepared for the next major earthquake, or are there still too many weaknesses that have not been fully addressed? If you found this report useful, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more updates and analysis on earthquake risk and infrastructure in California.